He lived in a mansion that could swallow silence whole, yet it never felt like home. Every night, Trevor would sit by the grand piano his late wife used to play, staring at nothing, just the echo of what he'd lost. But that night, the echo answered back. A little girl's laughter floated from the orphanage hallway, soft, pure, unfamiliar, and yet something in his chest ached like memory. She had skin as pale as milk against her deep brown curls, and eyes that carried both pain and light. "Sir, would you like to meet her?" the caretaker asked. He nodded, and the moment she looked up at him, the world went still. It was like staring into the face of a ghost, a familiar one. He didn't know her name, didn't know her story. Only that something inside him whispered, "Don't let her go again," and that's where his story truly began. Before we dive deeper, please, if you're listening to this right now, I want to prove my mom wrong. She said I can't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter. Subscribe to King's Folklore, and let's keep breathing life into tales that refuse to die. Now let's continue. The morning light spilled across the marble floors of Trevor Langston's penthouse like it didn't dare to touch him. His world was built on precision, numbers, contracts, and silence. But lately, even the ticking of his gold watch sounded too loud, too alive for a man who hadn't felt alive in years. He was the kind of billionaire who didn't throw parties or make headlines. He funded hospitals, orphanages, and community schools quietly, as if he were trying to buy redemption, piece by piece. No one knew what he'd lost years ago. A wife and child gone in a house fire that left him standing in the rain with nothing but a ring in his palm. That morning, his assistant, Camille, reminded him of the charity visit to St. Mary's Children's Home. He almost canceled. He hated cameras. He hated sympathy. But something in him, maybe guilt, maybe fate, whispered, "Go anyway." The orphanage smelled of crayons and powdered milk. Kids ran around with paper crowns and hand-me-down shoes. And in the corner, a little girl sat apart, drawing clouds with white crayons on blue paper. Her skin was striking, pale and smooth with flecks of light like sunlight on glass. Vitiligo, he thought, or maybe something rarer. But what caught him wasn't her skin, it was her stillness. When she looked up, their eyes met. "Hi," she said softly. "Are you here to take pictures?" He almost smiled. "No, sweetheart, just visiting." She nodded. Most people only visit when they want to feel good about themselves. That answer cut clean through the polished armor around his heart. He crouched down beside her. "What's your name?" "Alice." He blinked. That was his daughter's name, the one whose face he could no longer remember clearly, just a blur in the smoke of memory. He asked, "Who named you, Alice?" "The lady at the home said it was written on the paper I came with. She said maybe my mom wanted me to keep it." He froze. His hand tightened around his cane. Paper. Abandoned. Alice. He didn't believe in coincidences. Not anymore. Camille interrupted softly. "Sir, we need to move on." But Trevor couldn't. Something about that little girl anchored him. He sponsored her education on the spot. 2 weeks later, he returned. Then again. By the third visit, Alice ran up to him like a child runs to sunlight. She drew him pictures. A man, a woman, and a little girl holding hands under a tree. "That's us," she said once. "I don't know why, but when I draw you, I feel safe." Trevor's throat tightened. "You do?" "Yeah, like maybe I knew you before." He had no answer, just a hand trembling slightly as he tucked her drawing into his jacket pocket. That night, he stood before the piano again, staring at the frame of his late wife and their baby girl. He whispered, "If you can hear me, tell me if I'm doing the right thing." Silence. Then the faint sound of rain tapping the windows, like small fingers knocking. The adoption process began quietly, his lawyers handling everything. He didn't tell anyone except Camille, who watched him change without saying a word. When Alice finally moved into his home, she tiptoed through the halls like she didn't belong. Trevor knelt and said, "From today, this is your house too, okay? You can run, sing, dance. Just don't hide." She smiled shyly. "Can I play the piano?" He nodded, watching her tiny hands press the keys. The same song his wife used to play. It was off-key, innocent, and sacred. At night, he tucked her in, unsure how to say goodnight to someone who'd reopened his heart. From that day on, laughter filled the mansion. Messy, beautiful laughter that made even the servants smile again. But sometimes, when Alice looked at him a certain way, Trevor's chest would ache, like a voice from the past whispering through her eyes. One night she asked, "Why don't you have any pictures of your family?" He froze. "They're gone." Alice blinked slowly. "Do you think they'd like me?" He swallowed hard. "They'd love you." She nodded sleepily. "I think maybe your little girl and I could have been sisters." He smiled weakly, brushing her curls back. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know the universe was already stitching the truth together behind closed doors. That night, as the city lights flickered across his walls, Trevor Langston, billionaire, loner, and broken father, didn't realize he'd just brought his own blood home. And somewhere, miles away, a woman named Mandy woke up from a nightmare, the same one she'd had every night for years. A child's voice calling her name, fading into fire and smoke. She sat up, sweating, whispering, "Alice, Mommy's coming." What would you do if you met someone who felt like home, but you couldn't explain why? Well, let's continue. The Greyhound bus groaned as it rolled into Atlanta, carrying stories that no one cared to hear. Among them was Mandy Ross, a woman with tired eyes and hands that had healed too many people, but hadn't touched her own child in years. She had worked as a travel nurse for 3 long years. Night shifts, double shifts, all to give Alice a better life. But when her sister, Regina, offered to watch Alice just until you settle, Mandy believed her. Family meant safety, or at least it used to. Now, her hands shook as she clutched a worn duffel and the small photo she had of her daughter. A little girl with soft curls and a smile bright enough to light up the world. When Mandy reached her old neighborhood, the house she once called home was gone. A for sale sign leaned against the gate, half rusted. Her stomach dropped. The neighbor, old Miss Hattie, came out with her cane and shook her head slowly. "Mandy, baby, I told your sister not to do it." "Not to do what?" Mandy asked, breath breaking. "She sold everything, took the money and disappeared. Ain't nobody seen her or that baby since." Mandy stumbled back. Her knees hit the cracked pavement. For a moment, the world went silent. Then came the sound, not out loud but deep inside her. Her daughter's voice calling, "Mama?" She didn't sleep for days. She filed reports, begged the police, called shelters, nothing. Every night she prayed, "God, please, just let her be alive." Weeks turned into months, months into years. But mothers don't stop. Then one morning, Mandy opened her phone to read an article about a billionaire's new charity program. A photo of Trevor Langston smiling beside a small girl. The caption read, "Businessman adopts young orphan with rare skin condition." The coffee cup slipped from her hand. Her heart stopped. That skin, those curls, that smile. She whispered, "Alice?" For days she watched the video clips, the interviews, the foundation posts. It was her baby. Older, but hers. Mandy's hands trembled as she packed a small bag. She didn't have money for lawyers, didn't have fancy clothes, but she had one thing no one could take: proof. Her daughter's birth bracelet, with the same serial number printed on the paper Alice had when she was found at the orphanage. She took the first bus to Trevor Langston's estate, heart pounding. At the gate, security turned her away. "You can't just show up here, ma'am." "Please," she begged. "That little girl, Alice, she's my daughter." "Everyone says that." She pulled the bracelet from her pocket. "Look at this number. Please, I just need to see her." The guard hesitated, then called inside. Camille came out a few minutes later, looking cautious but kind. "You need to leave before—" "Please, I'm not lying," Mandy cut in. "I'm her mother. I just need to see her. I'll leave after that." Camille stared at the bracelet, then at Mandy's trembling hands. She sighed and said quietly, "Wait here." Inside, Trevor was reviewing files when Camille entered, looking unsettled. "Sir, there's a woman at the gate. Says she's Alice's mother." He froze. "Another one?" Camille shook her head. "This one's different. She has a bracelet. Same ID number as the document Alice came with." Trevor stood slowly. For a moment, the air in the room felt thick, like a storm was about to break. When Mandy stepped into the grand hall, her heart felt both full and empty. She'd imagined this moment so many times. Her daughter running into her arms, crying, "Mama!" But the little girl standing at the top of the stairs didn't move. She just stared. "Alice," Mandy whispered. Alice tilted her head. "Do I know you?" The sound broke her. Mandy dropped to her knees, tears blurring her vision. "I'm your mother, baby. I'm your mama." Trevor stepped forward. "Miss Ross, with all due respect." "Look at her," Mandy cried. "You think I don't know my own child?" Alice looked between them, confused. "Daddy, what's happening?" The word daddy hit Mandy like a punch. Trevor's face softened slightly. He wasn't cruel, just lost, like her. "Miss Ross, if what you're saying is true, we'll find out. I'll order a DNA test immediately." Mandy nodded, voice shaking. "Please, that's all I ask." That night, she couldn't sleep. Trevor didn't either. He watched Alice sleep peacefully, unaware that her world might shatter in the morning. When the nurse arrived to collect samples, neither spoke much, but their silence said everything. Later that week, the results came in. Trevor opened the envelope slowly, eyes tracing each word until he stopped at one line. Probability of maternity, 99, 98%. Probability of paternity, 99, 98%. He froze. His fingers went numb. Alice was his, both of theirs. The universe had returned what fire had taken. He whispered, "Oh my God," as tears finally escaped. Tears he hadn't shed since the day he buried his family. Outside, Mandy waited on the porch, hands clasped, heart trembling. When Trevor stepped out, he didn't speak. He simply handed her the paper. She read it once, then again, then dropped it, covering her mouth as the truth hit her full force. He whispered, "She's ours." And Mandy crumbled into his arms. For a long time, neither moved. Two broken souls holding on to the miracle they thought they'd lost forever. Have you ever prayed for something for so long that, when it finally comes, you don't know whether to laugh or cry? Reply in the comment section. Well, let's continue. For days, the mansion that once echoed with laughter fell into silence. Truth has a strange way of shaking every wall it touches, and in that house, everyone was still trying to breathe again. Alice sat in her room, clutching the stuffed bear Trevor had given her. She'd overheard pieces of conversation. DNA, mother, fire, lost. None of it made sense. All she knew was that grown-ups were crying too much, and that scared her. Trevor stood by the balcony watching the city lights blur. For years, he'd blamed God, fate, the fire, and himself. He thought the world had punished him beyond forgiveness. But now fate had returned his child, hidden inside a story so wild he could barely believe it. Mandy sat downstairs, staring at her hands. Every time she blinked, she saw Alice's baby face. Every time she breathed, she felt years of guilt choke her. She wanted to run upstairs, hold her, never let go. But she also feared what Alice might say or not say. When Trevor finally spoke, his voice was low. "She's yours, Mandy. She's ours. I don't even know what to say." Mandy wiped her eyes. "Say you'll let me see her." "Please," Trevor nodded. "She's upstairs." Mandy rose slowly, every step heavier than the last. She paused at the door, whispering, "God, give me strength." Inside, Alice turned as the door creaked open. The woman from before stood there, her eyes shining with tears that felt too familiar. "Hi," Mandy said softly. Alice hugged the bear tighter. "Are you my mom?" Mandy's lips trembled. "Yes, baby, I'm your mom. I never stopped looking for you." Silence filled the room. Then Alice stood, hesitating. "Why didn't you come sooner?" The question sliced her heart open. Mandy knelt, her voice trembling. "Because I trusted the wrong person, and I paid for it every single day. But I never stopped praying. Not once." Alice's eyes searched hers, cautious, curious, and scared. "Did you know my dad?" Tears slipped down Mandy's cheeks. "I thought he died. I thought both of you were gone. The fire, it destroyed everything." Alice looked confused. "Daddy said his family died too." Mandy smiled weakly through the tears. "That's because we were his family." The words hung in the air, gentle, powerful, undeniable. Alice blinked, then slowly she stepped closer, reaching out her small hand to touch Mandy's cheek. "You feel warm." Mandy laughed softly, choking on tears. "You're warm too, baby. You're home now." Trevor stood quietly at the doorway, watching the reunion. For the first time in years, he saw his life differently, not as a punishment, but as mercy disguised as pain. He cleared his throat gently. "Alice, come here, sweetheart." Alice turned, running to him. "Daddy!" He lifted her, holding her close. "You've got your mama's eyes," he whispered. She giggled, looking between them. "So, You're both mine? They both smiled through their tears. We've always been yours. That night, the three of them sat together for dinner. No fancy silverware, no guards, no formalities. Just laughter, questions, and stories about the little girl they all lost and found again. Mandy told her about the time Alice used to hide spoons in her diaper bag. Trevor told her how he once thought she was an angel when he first saw her. Alice laughed until her cheeks hurt. So I'm like, a miracle? Trevor smiled. Exactly that. Later, when Alice fell asleep between them on the couch, Mandy looked at him quietly. What happens now? He sighed. We figure it out together. No lawyers, no money, just time. She deserves both of us. Mandy nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you for not pushing me away. Trevor looked at her, his tone soft. I almost did, but something told me to listen. Maybe that's God's way of saying we're not done. Silence settled, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful, the kind of silence that heals. Over the next weeks, the house came back to life. Mandy moved into the guest room. Trevor canceled business trips. They learned to co-parent, awkwardly at first, but with care. Alice painted pictures of all three of them together and taped them to the fridge. One morning, she ran up shouting, Look, I made our family tree. Trevor knelt beside her. The drawing showed a tall man, a woman with curly hair, and a little girl with a sun around her head. He whispered, smiling, You gave yourself a halo. Alice grinned, because God found me. That night, Trevor stood by the piano again, the same one that had once been an altar of grief. Mandy joined him, her voice soft. She sleeping? He nodded. Yeah, she asked if angels get second chances. Mandy looked at him. And what did you say? He smiled faintly. I told her they do. I'm living proof. They stood there in silence, the music of their shared pain slowly turning into peace. The fire that once took everything had only burned away what wasn't meant to last, leaving behind what truly mattered. In the reflection of the piano, Trevor saw not loss, but grace, not the end of a story, but the beginning of one that was finally right. What if every heartbreak you've ever faced wasn't a punishment, but preparation for a miracle? So let's move on. In the end, what fire destroyed, faith restored. Trevor, Mandy, and little Alice became living proof that sometimes God doesn't erase the pain, He redeems it. Their home was no longer cold marble and silence, but laughter, healing, and second chances. They learned that love isn't measured by time lost, but by hearts willing to try again, and that no matter how far a family drifts, grace knows how to bring them back home. So if you're listening to this, and life has taken more than you thought you could bear, hold on. Miracles still find their way through ashes. If this story touched you, like this video, subscribe to King's Folklore, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters.